You probably heard that Alex Murdaugh, who was accused of killing his wife and one son, has been granted a new trial because of the sloppy courtroom antics that led to his conviction. So he'll get another trial. I had a personal experience here in Lehigh County, Pennsylvania, with very sloppy court operations. It was probably back in the 1980s when I was a full-time film critic at the Call Chronicle newspapers in Allentown, Pennsylvania. And one day in the mail, I received a notice to serve duty in a court trial. And my friends at the newspaper at the time said, "Oh, they'll never take you because you work at the newspaper. They generally don't take newspaper people." Well, they were wrong. And I got on a jury. The case involved a young man, probably in his 20s, who was convicted, I believe, of robbery. And so when his trial came up, and I, of course, was selected for the jury, even though they had told me, "Oh, they'll never pick you." The first day of the trial, when the prosecution was asking the man accused of his crimes where he worked, he said, "I work at the Call Chronicle newspapers." And everyone else on the jury looked at me as if, "Well, you must know this guy." I had no way of knowing him. At that point in time, the Morning Call Chronicle had over 800 employees. And as it turned out, he was a worker in distribution, bundling papers, loading them onto delivery trucks. So I never crossed his path. I didn't know him. He didn't know me. But anyway, they thought that was suspicious. So I went to the judge, or I requested from the bailiff that I speak to Judge Jim Gardner at the time. I think he's since passed. And I knew him because he went to the same high school where I went. And I said, "Jim, I think this is awkward, and I don't want to complicate things because now the other jurors think that I know this guy and might be leaning toward getting him off or something. And I never knew him, but maybe I should be dismissed." And he readily agreed that for appearance sake, I should not remain on the jury and they would take an alternate. But now the sloppiness of court activities, even here in Lehigh County, forget what's going on with the Murdaugh case, because in that case, the woman, a court person, I don't remember her exact title, she was saying things to the jurors before the jury made their decision about, "Well, you got to be careful about what he says. He'll try to trick you," whatever her language was. She was sort of convincing the jurors in the Murdaugh case that he was guilty. And that's why that trial has been overturned and he's due to a new trial. Well, here's my example of sloppiness in Lehigh County Court. And this was before I knew that the accused, the defendant, worked where I worked at this large publishing company. But we had been told from day one by the judge, do not discuss this case outside of this courtroom until I charge you. Then you 12 will discuss this case and come to a decision. First thing, emphasized. So the first time there was a break in the proceedings, we were led to a room in the courthouse by a bailiff. And it was a big enough table for all of us jurors to sit around it. Remind you, do not discuss this case, is what the judge told us repeatedly. The first break that we had going to that room with the bailiff, what were the first discussions out of most of the jurors' mouths? Discussing the case and deciding the young man was guilty. The first break. Where was the bailiff? Napping, sleeping. I cannot imagine that my one experience on a jury is very different from many other cases of juries being told not to discuss the case until the judge tells the jurors to discuss it. Shoddy supervision, sloppy courtroom maintenance, whatever you want to call it. So, because so much hangs on the decision of 12 jurors, these kinds of events create huge problems, or can later on. They can actually lead to an innocent person being convicted. So if you're ever on a jury, I hope you don't experience what I experienced way back in the 1980s in Lehigh County Courthouse. Thank you.